Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we're going to be talking once more about the Ukraine-Russian war of 2022. And, this is a war that's been going on for really 8 years. It's been going on since 2014, after the coup that happened in Ukraine. But most Americans don't know about that. Most Americans don't know about the coup of 2014. Most Americans don't know about the Minsk agreement. Most Americans don't know about the diversity of Ukraine, the regional populations and regional interests. Most Americans don't know that Ukraine has never really been a country. Yet, we are taught that Ukraine is the good guy in this situation, despite the fact that Volodymyr Zelensky is extremely corrupt. He is a Soros puppet. He is also a creation of an oligarch who used his TV presence as a psyop for the Ukrainian people to accept him as president. That is how in depth the Ukrainians are controlled by George Soros and his allies. That is how corrupt it is. That is how bad the situation is in Ukraine. And we're supposed to believe that the globalists are the good guys in this conflict, and I don't buy that. I don't buy that whatsoever. So we're going to talk about this some more because too many Americans are blue-pilled on this issue. And we cannot afford to wait 2 years for the red pills to come in. So I posted this on Gab. It was my video, Ukraine, Zelensky, and the Great Reset, which is a very awesome based video, if I do say so myself, exposing how Volodymyr Zelensky is indeed in bed with the World Economic Forum, which is the Great Reset incarnate, as well as some Igor Komoisky, as well as George Soros. And I talk about his corruption, how he does everything. He's worse than Putin. And I don't think it's close. And I'm going to talk about, in addition to how I talked about how he also imprisons political dissidents. He does that in Ukraine as well. I'm going to talk about some of the discrimination laws that went into place that Ukraine currently has in this video. So in this gab, I say the people who took 2 years to get red-pilled on COVID, are they going to take 2 years to get red-pilled on Ukraine? Again, Ukraine is an extremely corrupt nation. They are a puppet of the globalist cabal. That is what this war is about. This war is really about globalism. It is about globalism and how Ukraine wants to join the EU, join NATO, which, again, and then additionally, Volodymyr Zelensky declared as a war goal, a revanchist war goal, to retake Crimea from Russia. Because, Crimea belongs to Russia now. It has since 2014. And he wants to join NATO with that war goal, with an ongoing war in Ukraine, which would drag the United States into war for Ukraine because NATO has a clause that says an attack on one is an attack on all. So any war that Ukraine is involved in, we would be obliged by the treaty to be involved because it is a defense pact. However, apparently America does not have scruples to say that you must be in a time of peace in order to join NATO. We have not made that clear with Ukraine, apparently. And instead, we focus more on corruption, which is good, but the fact that Ukraine has an ongoing war and they want to join an alliance that would oblige the allies to fight that war for them, and I mean for them because, let's face it, without the billions of dollars, and I'm sure some of those billions of dollars are totally not being pocketed by the Ukrainian government, I'm sure that they're completely kosher. That Zelensky is completely kosher with his handling of all that money he's getting from overseas. I'm sure he's completely kosher with that. So anyway, We have been lied to so much as a people. We cannot afford to be giving so much deference to the media, so much deference to the government on the narratives that they want to push on the people, especially when the Ukraine narrative has been debunked for 8 years. It has been debunked for 8 years. Again, there was a coup in Ukraine. If a coup happens in a country like that, as blatantly as it did, it was a color revolution in the style that George Soros often talks about, and they overthrew a president. Now, we call that a coup. The narrative was pushed that this was a popular uprising. It was so popular that it was not, that the eastern portions and southern portions of Ukraine weren't really involved in it. Now, were they? That's how popular it was. So you had Crimea pretty much rise up, but certainly Russia went in to swoop that. And then you had the eastern portions of Ukraine rebel against the new regime because that was an illegitimate government. And they had, and I would go so far as to say they had biblical justification for rebelling against their government, because that was not the government they signed up for. That was an illegal coup, and they had the right to declare that the new government was invalid and that Romans 13 did not apply to that government. They had every right to do that. So with that said, Americans are still blue-pilled on this issue. And now we are so blue-pilled that we are trying to take it out on the Russians. We are making the Russians the new unvaccinated. The Russians are the new unvaccinated. So what do I mean by that? So what's going on right now? We're trying to apply sanctions, which don't really work. Sanctions don't really work. They've never stopped North Korea. They've never stopped Iran. And they never really stopped Russia. Russia never gave back Crimea. No takesies, backsies. So, with that said, not only they're trying to do sanctions, economic sanctions, but we also have tech companies trying to censor and stall the payments of credit cards and apps and websites and all this other stuff on the Russian population. Like, I don't care that the Russians can't watch Pornhub. Like, that, who cares? That's a benefit to them people. But, trying to shut down app stores, payment processors, trying to inflict suffering on the Russian people, and this is going to backfire hard. More virtue signaling about dumping Russian vodka and banning the sale of Russian vodka. Which, I wanted to have some of this tonight, but I just didn't have it in me, because politics makes you want to drink. It really does. But I didn't have it in me tonight. Instead, I spent time with my family. So with that said, I got some Russian vodka next to my Italian whiskey and my German-style beer. So I have a pretty diverse selection here. But the Russian vodka is very crucial to the Moscow Mule and the White Russians, because Big Lebowski is a legend. So with that said, there is so much virtue signaling going on that we must now, Eric Swalwell talked about trying to deport Russian exchange students. Senator Lindsey Graham called for a Brutus. Now, if you don't know who Brutus is, in Roman history, Brutus was the ringleader, is credited as the ringleader for the assassination of Julius Caesar. Now, again, if you actually study Roman history, Brutus was the villain. Julius Caesar was the populist uprising guy. He was the anti-establishment guy who the populace rallied around. And Brutus was part of the elite class that could not take the Caesarian reforms that were incredibly necessary for Rome to continue. So, if you're trying to compare Putin to Caesar by calling for a Brutus, which is first of all, historically, that's a blunder on your part, because what are kings called 2,000 years after Julius Caesar? They're called Tsar. They're called Kaiser. Those words derive from Caesar. So, if you're calling him a Caesar, you're giving Putin a compliment that he has not earned. He's not earned that title. Maybe if he takes over Ukraine, and the rest of the Slavic peoples, he can earn the title of Caesar. But he's not there yet. His military accomplishments do not stack up to one of the greatest generals of all time. So I'm digressing because I like history. And part of that history is that, Kiev was the original capital of Russia, by the way. And, the Rus people, which is the ethnic group of the Russians, the Rus, that they were basically a cross between Slavs and Vikings. It's actually a pretty cool history that they have. So, but anyway, Americans don't know this. Americans don't know this. What they do know is what the media tells them, what the TV tells them. What the TV tells them, they regurgitate. But I'll posit to you, and we want to start treating Russians like the unvaccinated, even though, and here's what I'm going to posit to you. In the last 30 years, so it's 2022, actually let's give the last 32 years, make sure the Gulf War is included, has there been a more justified invasion of another country in the last 32 years? Since Bush 1 was president, has there been a more justified invasion of a foreign country from one country to another that has ever taken place? Because Russia is attacking Ukraine because Ukraine wants nukes. They want to join NATO while still having an active war against Russian proxies. They want to retake and recapture Crimea as a war goal. Like, this is pretty bad. And then, of course, you don't want a George Soros puppet state on your border, because what they would then run that same playbook on Russia. So this is a clear instance of one nation rebelling against globalism and the globalist cabal, the globo homo cabal. Because, let's face it, Zelensky's a bit of a transvestite, by the way. So with that said, the Ukraine is a puppet of our enemies here in the States. And if we want to compare invasions and wars in the last 32 years, Afghanistan, now military action after 9/11 is one thing. Occupying a country for a generation, even like 9 years after bin Laden was killed. So we blame bin Laden for 9/11, then we're staying in Afghanistan 9 years after he was killed. Does that make sense? Is that justified? No, it's not. It's not justified. Iraq, where we deposed Saddam Hussein and created a power vacuum that then encouraged their rivals, Iran, and terrorist groups that were created by the United States, like ISIS, to take over Iraq. Was that justified? No, and that's one of the biggest foreign policy blunders in American history. How about the war in Libya? That wasn't justified. We overthrew Gaddafi, created a failed state, and left a power vacuum that terrorists have fulfilled. Because guess what? The same rebels that John McCain and Marco Rubio wanted to help out and Lindsey Graham wanted to help out are the same people that stormed the embassy, or it was a consulate, not an embassy, that killed the ambassador of the United States and 3 others. The same rebels. Because the CIA was running a gun, a weapons library, so to speak, where they were loaning weapons, and they were trying to collect the weapons from Libya to send to Syria to support the terrorists in Syria. That's what the CIA was doing. That's why they did not intervene. So, and that's why that ambassador was in, what was that town? I can't remember the town. That's why he was there, and he was meeting with the Turks. So, again, call me a conspiracy theorist, but I'm right. And again, as far as like 9/11 and Iraq, I haven't even touched conspiracy theories there yet. I could, but not today, not in this video. The Russians are the new vaccinated. Now, here's an interesting war. I'll be honest, I don't know too much about this war, but even fewer people in America know that Azerbaijan and Armenia fought a war in the last 5 years. How many people know about that? Now, I believe that war was over land disputes, so it was a revanchist war. So maybe that one counts. But again, I'm not informed enough on the issue. But again, most people don't know that war even happened. So, can we name a more justified invasion of another country? And yes, I do believe that, I don't believe that national sovereignty is a real thing, so to speak. Like, I don't believe that, oh, this is a sovereign nation. No, there's a sovereign God. That's where the sovereignty is. Nations don't have the right to exist, whether it's Israel, Ukraine, Russia, or even the United States. We exist by the grace of God, and that's it. And the average empire lasts about 200 years, give or take. And so there's no entitlement for a nation to continue it, a nation, regime, a form of government to continue its existence. That's not an entitlement of history. So while we want to make the Russians the new unvaccinated, we are actually helping Putin's case. By trying to inflict suffering on the Russian people, you are proving everything that Putin is saying about the Russophobia, about how the hatred of Russians, especially in Ukraine. Let's talk about Ukraine for a second. Are you aware that they have a language law that imposes fines on people who do not offer Ukrainian content? So, for instance, if you operate a website or a newspaper, you have to have a Ukraine side and if you have a Russian side, you have to have both. Politicians have to operate primarily in Ukrainian, and then they can impose fines on disobedience. That's not free speech. That's not free speech. I understand, pushes to make English the official language of the United States, which it basically is, but I don't agree that fines should be imposed on disobedience. Like, that's not a free country. That is an explicitly anti-Russian action made to discriminate against Russian-speaking peoples in Ukraine. It is also made to, I don't want to say, it is made to culturally eradicate Russian speakers in Ukraine. That is the purpose of that. It is made to send that on a slow decline so that Ukraine can build a national identity that it's never really had before, an artificial one, and it comes at the expense of the Russian-speaking and ethnically Russian population in Ukraine. When Vladimir Putin talks about the Nazification of Ukraine, he's talking about things like this. This law passed overwhelmingly in Ukrainian parliament. It was an overwhelmingly supported bill in Ukrainian parliament. So, and it is not it is an anti-free speech law to say that a website or a newspaper must operate in certain languages or else be fined. That is an anti-free speech law that is specifically targeted at a certain very prevalent population in that country. And when you pile that on top of the actions that are being taken by big tech to target the Russian people, you are proving everything that Putin is saying about how the world hates Russia and how we need to take, or how they need to take preemptive action so that they are not boxed in by NATO. That makes sense. So, Ukraine is the bad guy here. They are a Soros puppet. They are our enemies. This has been a piggy bank for our enemies here in the United States for several years. Since 2014, Ukraine has been a piggy bank for Democrats, who are our enemies here in the States. And yet, We are falling for the same narratives. We are falling for the banana in the tailpipe again and again and again because we are giving too much deference to the media. We are giving too much deference to our government, to our politicians. It's undue. It's undeserved. They have lost the deference. We should not be giving any deference to the mainstream media. They lied to us for a living. They're in deep bed with the CIA. They have been for decades. Yet, so many go along with the sheep. It is another instance of mass formation psychosis. So, to this I say, enjoy your Russian vodka. Eat your chicken Kiev. I don't know any Russian dishes. Read a Dostoevsky novel. Crime and Punishment is pretty good, by the way. And watch hockey, I guess. So, anyway, my name's Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like this kind of content, subscribe. That's the least you can do. Also, check out evangelicaldarkweb.org. We have a Patreon-like system where you can become a paid subscriber and help out the site. And again, the reason why I'm doing this is because I cannot stand, again, the secular term for it is mass formation psychosis. I think it's just people going along with the spirit of the age. They're being led by the spirit of the age. They're being taken captive by false and vain ideology. And I can't stand that. I can't stand being the only one who sees the truth about the Ukrainian situation and how this is such a corrupt nation. This is a Soros puppet state. I can't stand being the only one who sees that. I can't stand people that should be on our side supporting George Soros. I can't stand people supposedly being on our side wanting to defend the Democrats' piggy bank. Like, that's like funding Planned Parenthood. Maybe not as unethical, but it's, a step below, 2 steps below. So we need to actually think about this. What is in America's best interest? It's not It's not Ukraine's borders. And it's certainly not Zelensky, the transvestite comedian who's a puppet for those who installed him. So we need more truth out there. And again, I'm doing factual reporting on the issue, on the war. And I'm not, this video is commentary, but I also do the factual reporting that's just straight facts, maybe a little bit of analysis on a military tactical analysis, not really a political one. So I do that I'm doing that as well because people don't know what's going on. So we need some truth out there. And yes, eventually it is an opportunity to share the gospel. So that's all I got for today. Let me know what you think about what I think because I'm pretty controversial these days. And I will catch you on the next one.